I wanted just to begin to contextualize a little bit about the prioritizations that we are looking to advance here in this year's 2021-2022 budget. Now, the predicate in terms of our focus on a budget is the reality of getting out of the freezers and administering into people's arms these vaccines. We must do that in order to safely reopen for in-person instruction, our schools, to reopen our small businesses, as well as businesses large and small all across the state of California. Our goal must be to provide more resources, more discretion, more opportunity for low-wage workers, for workers at all spectrums, to provide more resources, allow for more investment, more spending in our economy. And clearly, as always and understandably, our urgent focus must be and maintain our focus and vigilance on the issue of wildfire preparedness in this state. Less than a year ago still, on January 26th, we had the first reported case of COVID here in the state of California, and everything changed. So much so that we were experiencing what the rest of the nation, for that matter, people around the globe were experiencing. You can see here the chart. This is the United States real GDP growth. While it's been relatively consistent, a few dips, nothing like you see in the far right of this chart. Projected GDP decrease of 26.5% actually manifested more acutely with a decline of 31.5% in the spring of 2020. California was not immune to that contraction. Our unemployment went from 3.9% to 16.4% just in a few months. Our GDP growth, again, at 3.9%, we were then dealing with the realities of a 30+% contraction. 1 out of every 6 jobs now not created, but now lost in the state of California just between February and May of last year. Our numbers changed, but our values did not. And I think this is just important to underscore as, again, I contextualize where we are today by reflecting on where we've been on this journey together over the last 12 months. The numbers changed dramatically, a $60 billion swing, but our values did not change. We collectively, working with the legislature, we made tough choices to temporarily bridge to a brighter future. We invested in job growth and we invested in our economic recovery, and we ultimately landed on a $202.1 billion balanced budget. We are projecting, more importantly, we're proposing to the legislature a record investment in our public schools. Unprecedented in California's history, $85.8 billion, the highest investment per pupil that the state has ever advanced. We are investing in our energy and our focus to deal with the disproportionate impacts of this pandemic on the issues impacting our low-income communities disproportionately. And that's why we're putting $4.6 billion up to extend learning time, to provide supports to our schools, more summer school, and before and after school programming, other supplemental supports in this flexible package, but an additional $4.6 billion that's building off the 5.3 last year on learning loss. This year, we want to focus this, again, flexibility, similar to last year, but more emphasis, more focus on extending learning time because of the clear challenges and strife that so many of our families are struggling with the current distance learning model. The issues around immediate action are paramount. We can't wait in this environment. We can't wait, as we traditionally have, for the fiscal year to end, to adjudicate and dialogue around the give and takes of budget. There's certain things that require urgency. And as I said in the outset, I'll end on this, what our urgency package is. It certainly includes this, or referred to as immediate action, that we hope to see in the next few weeks. And that's a $2 billion investment to safely, can't do it safely, we can't do it, but to safely reopen our schools for in-person learning. That's our default, safely reopening schools for in-person learning. Speaking of investments, Not lost on anyone the importance imperative of continuing our investments in testing and contact tracing, isolation, quarantine, focusing, yes, on vaccinations, which I imagine maybe the only reason anyone showed up today to talk about vaccinations, as well as additional supports across the spectrum for state response. We're putting $4.4 billion into this budget. Not all of that is general fund. We expect a substantial portion, disproportionate number of that to be reimbursed, but this is the dollar figure. Remember, $13 billion last year in the last, at least, fiscal year, and 4.4, at least since the beginning of the pandemic, 13 billion, 4.4 billion emergency response we're putting related to COVID relief in this budget. 372 for vaccines. Here's a slide that's also important, anticipating additional resources coming from the feds, additional 350 million for vaccines, and 1.7 billion for testing and tracing.